This presentation will take a deep dive into the recently released agricultural statistics from USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service agricultural census performed every 5 years and released earlier this year. Below this presentation is a county profile summary for some quick statistics. This presentation will focus on current statistics and look at changes over the past 15 to 20 years and in some cases since 1950. Let's start by looking at the trend in total farmland for Whatcom County in the blue line and all of western Washington in the orange line. The associated boxes for each year represent the percent change from the previous census and the total amount of farmland. This graph allows you to compare the pace of change in farmland values in Whatcom County versus the remainder of western Washington. Okay, this graph shows the total number of farms in the blue line and associated boxes and the average farm size in the red columns and associated boxes between 1978 and 2017. A couple of things to mention here. The average farm size has dropped by 28 acres during this time period. The number of farms has increased from 1,445 to 1,712, or an increase of about 18.5%. These two values could be related, assuming that total farmland remains constant, but as previously stated, the county has lost 9.9% of total farmland between 1997 and 2017. Let's take a closer look at individual farm size. This graph shows the breakdown of farm size in 6 different categories as shown on the x-axis. I've plotted these categories for both 1997 and 2017 to see if there are any differences. The boxes represent the percent change between the 2 years within each category. Some notable differences. There was a 240% increase in the farm category of 1 to 9 acres, a 34% increase in the farms ranging between 10 and 49 degrees, a 39 and 38% decrease for the 50 to 179 acre and the 180 to 499 category, respectively. An increase in the 500 to 999 acre category, a 500% increase in the 1,000 acre plus category. One factor that must be considered when looking at this data is that as previously highlighted, total farmland decreased 9.9% during this time period, but the total number of farms increased by 1.9%. Now let's switch gears and talk about agricultural sales. Total sales were just above $250 million in 1997 and just over $372 million in 2017. This is roughly a 48% increase, but does not factor in inflation. Some other notable changes during this time frame. Growth in the fruits, tree, nuts, and berries category that represented a little more than 8% of the agricultural economy, 20 years later represents over 32%, or roughly a third of the total economy. Milk and other products dropped from 68% to a little over 50%. Vegetable, melons, and potatoes jumped from 0.5% to over 3%. Poultry and eggs went from over 5% to below 1%. This graph and table shows the total number of farms and the number of direct market farms, those that sell directly to consumers. I've included Whatcom County as well as Western Washington and Washington State to see how the county compares. In 1997, farms that directly sell to consumers made up in Washington State 11%, Western Washington 15%, Whatcom County 11%. By 2017, farms that sell directly to consumers made up 12% at the state level, Western Washington 16%, and Whatcom County at 14%. In summary, in Washington and Western Washington, direct market farms numbers grew by 1%, while in Whatcom County that number grew by over 4%. Let's take a closer look at direct market sales. In 1997, the value of direct sales represented 1% of all agricultural sales in Western Washington. 20 years ago, that number represents 3%. In real-world dollars, the growth was 4.6 times the 1997 value. While in Whatcom County, in 1997, direct market sales represented 0.44% of sales. This number grew to over 1% 20 years later. In real dollar value, growth was 4.4 times the 1997 value. This shows that Whatcom County is largely on par with direct market sales when compared to the rest of Western Washington. Now we are looking specifically at certified organic production and value for Washington, Western Washington, and Whatcom County over a 15-year period. USDA did not include organic values on their survey prior to 2002. For Washington, Western Washington, and Whatcom County, the number of certified organic farms peaked in 2007, but some growth did occur between 2012 and 2017. Organic sales grew from representing just 0.4% of total sales in 2002 to almost 8% by 2017. That value grew 37 times between 2002 and 2017. In Western Washington, sales represented 0.3% of total sales in 2002, and this number grew to over 29.5% in 2017. The value grew 114 times between 2002 and 2017. While in Whatcom County, organic sales represented a larger portion of total sales in 2012, then dropped 5 years later. The actual value grew 34 times in this 15-year period. In summary, it doesn't appear Whatcom County is keeping up with the rapid growth of organic sales when compared to the rest of Western Washington, but the total growth of sales is more on par with that of Washington State. Let's take a look at farmland ownership. USDA NASS breaks down farmland ownership use into three major categories: own, rental, and tenant. Full owners operate only the land they own. Part owners operate land that they own and also land that they rented from others. Tenants operate only land they rent from others or work on shares for others. In 2002 in Western Washington, 68% of farmers owned all of the land that they used. This dropped to 54% in 2017. The rented category grew from 24% to 39% in that time period, while the tenant category dropped 1%. Keep in mind that over 46,000 acres of ag land were lost during that time period. But it appears in Western Washington that there's less total land and less farmers owning all the land they operate. While in Whatcom County in 2002, 45% of used land was fully owned and 47% a mixture of owned and rented. By 2017, 54% of farmers now rent and own the land they use. To reiterate, Whatcom County lost over 45,000 acres of farmland in this time period, which is almost equal to all of the land lost in Western Washington during that same time period. And the majority of the county's farmland is now combined own-rental. We are looking at the number of dairy farms. These are the columns with values on left side of the graph, number of cows, the line with values, and the overall value of dairy products sold, the values in the green boxes, between 2002 and 2017. Since 2002, both the number of dairy farms and the number of dairy cows in Whatcom County have declined, though in the past 5 years the number of cows has steadied. Between 2002 and 2017, the number of dairy farms decreased by 62.1%, the number of cows increased by 21.8%, the value of dairy products sold increased by 12.9%, and the value per cow increased by 52.3%. For reference, comparing 1950 values to 2017 values, the number of dairy farms decreased by 97.5%, the number of cows increased by 21.8%, the value of dairy products sold increased by over 2,404%, and the value per cow increased by 1,956%. This number does not account for inflation. Now let's look at the berry industry. Between 2002 and 2017, total berry acreage went from 8,364 acres to 14,604 acres. This is an increase of roughly 43%. This has largely been due to growth of blueberry acreage from a little over 1,000 acres to over 5,100 acres in total acreage. This is a growth of 80% in a 15-year period. Whatcom County represents 40% of the state's acreage and has the most amount of acres of all counties in the state. Raspberry plantings also grew, but because of the life cycle of a raspberry planting, I'll be using the bearing acreage and not including the non-bearing acreage. Growth went from a little over 7,000 acres to a little over 8,500 acres for a growth of about 17%. This is the 87% of the state's red raspberry acreage. Let's switch gears and look closely at the farmers themselves. In 2002, females represented 10% of Whatcom County farmers. This has changed to 37% in 2017. There were some pretty big shifts in age classes between 2002 and 2017. There were considerable growth in the 25 to 30 age group, going from 3 to 7%. There was a decline in the 35 to 44 and 45 to 54 age class to 13 and 21% respectively, a minor change in the 55 to 64 category, but a big jump in the 65 plus category, which now represents close to a third of all Whatcom County farmers. Well, naturally, farmers aged during this time period, but the total number of farmers jumped to a little over 2,900 from over 1,400, or an increase of about 100% in that time period. The majority of farmers also reported that their primary occupation is not farming in 2017, a change from 2002 when it was reported as their primary occupation. Over the 15 years between 2002 and 2017, there weren't many changes in the reported time present on the current farm. The categories pretty much stayed the same. Lastly, let's look at the reported race of farmers. The vast majority of farmers in Whatcom County reported to be white, 95% in 2002 and 91% in 2017. But the race category with the biggest change was Asian, jumping from 2% to 5%. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and if you're interested in more information, look at the links to the census data below.